Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. I'm AmandaMuse, and today we are talking about podcasts. I have a podcast, I listen to podcasts. I always tend to have AirPods in my ears at some point or another in the day, and I have podcasts that fit different needs, and I'm excited to share the latest and greatest 10 podcasts you should be binging this year, along with how do you actually listen to podcasts? Because I get it, not everybody is on board with podcasting, so I'm gonna share that with you. But for now, hi, I'm Amanda. I haven't done a sit-down video in a while, so welcome back. If you haven't seen this face in a while, there's a ton of videos on my channel, lots of vlogs, but we've been wrapping up summer, so here we are, September. Kids are back at school. Maybe you have more time to listen to podcasts. Maybe you're actually getting out in the world because things are happening. Kind of. I'm not sure. I am not really getting out in the world much, but I am listening to a ton of podcasts because honestly, that's how I self-care. So enough with the chitter chatter. Let's get started. Okay, one last thing. I'm going to leave a playlist with the most recent videos where I have shared podcasts I love because I've been doing this for several years now. In case, I don't know, maybe you already listened to all of the ones I'm going to mention today and you're in the market for some other ones. I have lots of videos out there. Go check them out. For the shows today, they are in no particular order. I had to list out 10 and then I had to cross-reference all the videos I've already made to make sure I didn't mention any of these yet. And I'm pretty sure these are 10 brand spanking new shows for your ears. So, let's begin. To Live and Die in LA, Season 1. I was recommended this podcast by a few of my followers on Instagram, and I was not disappointed. It definitely falls into the crime category where there is a crime that takes place and this actress goes missing, and essentially this journalist kind of gets roped into this story unintentionally, and it's really interesting how it all comes into play. For some reason, Season 2 is it's not gripping me. Also just kind of sad but interesting factoid is that the journalist who did Season 1 actually ends up divorcing from his wife in Season 2. I just think that it goes to show how all-consuming these cases can be for journalists and people working these cases. It's just kind of shocking in that way. But in any case, Season 1 really takes you for a ride. Lots of ups and downs. I listened to it this winter. Whenever I think of To Live and Die in LA, I also equate it to shoveling snow because I did a whole lot of shoveling snow listening to that podcast this season. I binged it. Check it out. It was a good one. This next show actually kind of scared me, and I still have 2 episodes left, and I just can't right now. It's called The Devil Within, and it talks about a true crime case that took place, I want to say in the 80s, when there was a whole genre of I'm even scared to talk about it. That's how much it scares me, and I'm not even a religious person, but it scares me. So I will tell you this, read up on it. If it's something you're interested in, great. But it also kind of scares me, the energy around that show. I'm not sure I want that energy in my life because it takes you to a dark place. So forewarning, this may not be for everybody, but I know I have some people who listen to podcasts or watch television shows that they like a little fear factor, and it just kind of freaked me out. So I listened to this one on a road trip. And it definitely entertained me for the many hours I was in the car. It also kind of scared me a little bit, though. I'm pretty sure my eyes were this big while I was driving. So, true crime case, a boy commits a crime seemingly out of nowhere, and it is shocking, I'll tell you that much. So, if you're in the market for a really binge-worthy type of crime show where it takes one story and just highly recommend. And unlike the first show I was just telling you about, To Live and Die in LA is more of a journalistic approach. I don't really recall, now I did listen to it in the winter, but I don't really recall a lot of scary facts. It's not the type of case where this one is I'm scared. So keep that in mind. This particular show, Red Collar, is on my roster of shows I listen to all the time. So Red Collar follows white collar crimes. So think, people you wouldn't suspect to go and commit actual murder. So a lot of white collar crimes, you'd think fraud, embezzlement, pyramid schemes, that kind of stuff. You don't necessarily always hear about there being murder in those situations. So in these ones, there are. So Red Collar Crimes follows that. It's also part of the Audio Check network, which is a network I just adore. This think like Crime Junkie, Something Was Wrong, that genre. And so honestly, most shows that come out of that network, I adore. And so this happens to be one of them. The host has a really like journalist, reporter, anchor style of voice, which could be a deterrent for some. I find most of the podcasts I listen to fall into that genre of like casual spoken word. I do like structure and planned out, shows, but I also just like a casual chat. This is not that. The shows themselves tend to be like 40 minutes or so in length. So I do like that like succinct story. If you're doing laundry or you're just doing a quick tidy of your house on a Sunday, which tends to be the day I listen to most podcasts, I find it a great one. And I see it pop up on my Apple Podcasts and I tend to listen. So I enjoy that show. I listen to it every week and it surprises me how entertaining it is. And if you are a true crime fan, like myself, you may find you start to actually get to know a lot of the stories, and a lot of your favorite true crime hosts will sort of cycle through really similar storylines just because there's some of the top murder cases that get a lot of notoriety and attention, and so then they therefore cover them. Where this particular show, I have not heard of any of the crimes because they're not those, high profile cases that you're hearing about in the news. They might be like page 3, right? So I've been very entertained thus far. Switching gears here, it definitely is still a crime, but this show is called OC Swingers. It also falls into the Audio Check network, I'm pretty sure. That's how I heard about this one. And this particular show follows the case of Grant Robichaud, who, the title, Swingers, leads a different type of lifestyle with his girlfriend, but there are some concerns about consent. And it was up until August, I listened to the last episode, although I'm not entirely sure I have the complete resolution of this show, but it does definitely follow the true, case that was unrolling and unraveling, well, not unraveling, the case as it was rolling out for Grant Robichaud, who was a doctor who was involved in some intimate situations where consent maybe didn't quite happen. There could have been some drugs involved. This is all alleged, by the way, like this case is ongoing. And so this reporter is following this case. And it was kind of interesting to hear the play-by-play of a reporter doing her journalistic work with an ongoing case during a pandemic. So kind of interesting from that perspective. And the story is just very curious. I would be curious if you listen to this show, what some of your thoughts are. Does his being a middle class to upper class white male and that privilege that comes along with that, does that impact his case? I'm gonna go with yes. So very interesting. It kept me entertained. I'm seeing a pattern here because I really love the Audio Check networks, just a heads up, but this next show is called CounterClock and it follows a crime, so a case that took place, I want to say in the 70s or 80s. Forgive my missing some facts. When you listened and binge a show, it could be like months ago, so some of the memories are a little bit blurry, but basically a journalist takes a case. There has been resolution. There is someone in jail right now for the crime, but should that person be there? And as they pick apart the case and put all the pieces together, some of it doesn't align. And I'm still not sure how I feel about who's in jail because of this crime. And sometimes when you look at one angle of it, you're like, well, yeah, that person did it. And then from another perspective, you're like, did they though? And so it's really interesting as she picks apart this case and all of the facts in there, you really start to question it yourself. So very binge worthy. I'm pretty sure I stopped life to just binge this whole show. And actually what was great is when they released it, they didn't do week to week, if I'm not mistaken. They released the entire show, which I appreciate because I'm telling you this right now, I'm watching a Netflix show I didn't know was a week to week release, and so now I actually have to wait, and that is so frustrating. Like, who has time to wait? Okay, this is like total gear switch. Have you heard of the podcast called Rabbits? This show, first of all, I can't believe I've never told you about it because I listened to it quite some time ago. Like maybe right at the start of the pandemic, It's all blurry. I'm still sort of processing the last 18 months. But the show Rabbits is a fictional show. There were points when I was listening to this podcast where I was like, should I be listening to this? Is this real? What is happening? That is how well it was done. I'm surprised that season 2 hasn't been released, but if you want to go for a ride and listen to a show that is just a work of art, did you listen to Homecoming? Homecoming was a show that kind of blew my mind. I didn't know fictional podcasts could exist like that. This mimics this. The storyline is essentially a woman goes missing, Yumiko, with very mysterious circumstances. She is playing this online game, and there's a lot of kind of spooky, dark things. A little touch of supernatural. It is just like... It's really well done. It's hard to even tell you. You just have to listen to the first episode and then let me know. And it is highly binge worthy. I remember just being a little jumpy. Like I would be walking the dogs and just being like, should I be listening to this? Like that is how well done it is. It is fictional. I Googled it. None of the stuff is real, but I was like, is it though? And you'll know what I mean if you've listened to the show or once you start listening, because it has so many mysterious elements to it. You're like, is this real? But we're pretending it's fake. Like someone's got to let me in on the secret. So highly recommend. This next podcast you might be familiar with. It's called Friendo. I'm the host. I could not let this video go by without telling you about Friendo. So I do have some exciting news about my own podcast, which, in a nutshell is a place where friends meet and chat and we talk about life, similar to what I do here on my channel, but just definitely in podcast form and with guests. And so I recently overhauled my podcast, which used to be called The Sandwich, and I've given her a little facelift. It's now called Friendo. And each week I have a guest that comes on and we talk about something, an interesting job, a fascinating hobby, something we should learn about. Last week, I actually had Dean as my guest, and we spoke about all things aviation. We pulled back the curtain on what it's like being part of a flight crew, and even a little touch of when I myself was a flight attendant many moons ago. The week before, a friend of mine who is a sleep consultant, we spoke about all things back to school, getting back on schedule with sleep. And this Friday, actually, I have an amazing guest who will be talking about her experience having a husband with severe addiction, and especially falling into September, which is National Recovery Month. And it's just a fascinating conversation. And so every week I have guests like this. And then Dean also joins me for a little chat each week. And I also share my 3 favorite things of the week. So it's this great little, happy little update with Amanda and friends. And I hope you enjoy the look and feel of the podcast because it has had some improvements. It also has some support. It has been signed to a network. Very exciting announcements coming soon. So anyway, check it out, Friendo, wherever you find podcasts. This next show is called The Dropout, and this follows the story of Elizabeth Holmes, which is just such a curious storyline. So not to give too much away, but it's pretty, well-known information. Elizabeth Holmes was in the tech industry. She was the, in a startup. She had a startup of her own where they had created this technology where you would, with one drop of blood, be able to test for all these different things. And it was just fascinating. And she had a lot of investors. And it was found out that the tech actually didn't even exist. And it was just this whole fraudulent technology, but then also like this fraudulent persona. She really tried to mimic Bill Gates, I'm pretty sure, with like the black turtleneck look. And it's just a really interesting storyline. You want to root for her because she's this young woman in tech and startups and all of this, but then you're like, why did you do that? So interesting story. And it really answered a lot of questions that I had specifically about her and this whole, Elizabeth Holmes situation that I didn't really follow closely in the news, but I feel like I definitely have a better understanding now. So very interesting. And I keep saying I was highly entertained because I am. If I'm sharing a podcast, I was entertained. So now you know. This next podcast might be interesting to those people who were a fan of Dax Shepard and Armchair Expert. I find sometimes I fall in love with podcasts and then I fall out of love with podcasts. such is life. I'm sure people fall in love with my channel and then fall out of love. Like, it's a cycle, and we weave our way in and out of people's lives. And for a long time, Armchair Expert was like my go-to. And then I didn't love that there weren't enough women on the show. I was kind of like over his conversation about himself. Like, I don't know, I had all these things. I still enjoy his show from time to time, but I definitely don't reach for it as often. Now, Michael Rosenbaum, Inside of You, is a great podcast that is a bit similar, but not. So obviously their personalities are very different. Michael Rosenbaum was on the show Smallville, and in a similar fashion, he has these high profile guests that come on his show and interviews them. It is a fairly new show to my roster, and so I'm still adjusting to his personality. I can find him somewhat abrasive at times and a little like, whoa, that was weird. That came out of left field. He's a little bit like self-deprecating, is that the right word? But then also has a touch of an ego. I don't know. There's something that's like curious about his personality, and I do find I listen if the guests intrigue me. So I'm not necessarily drawn to him and his personality, but rather the guests he has on the show. One of the most recent ones I listened to was with Amanda Klutz. I really adore her. I find her sunshiny personality just a breath of fresh air. I also find her story very tragic. She lost her husband to COVID-19, and he was very young, and it was very shocking. And anyway, she was just like wonderful to listen to, and it was a great interview, and I enjoyed it. So, for those kind of like looking to replace Armchair Expert, it's a great one. Or add it because they love Armchair. This could be another option for you when you're waiting for those new episodes. This next podcast, which will be my last one for today, is called Uncover, and specifically season 9, which was Evil by Design, followed the storyline of Peter Nygard, who, in my humble opinion, and likely that of the world, is a despicable human being. Like, he is the grossest. I can't not make this face when I think of him. Just, ugh. The things he did, the things he got away with, proven because he's in jail, is just icky. I had no idea about this story. It was a total abuse of power, white privilege. Ugh, there is just a lot to unpack. I was mad. I was mad for days. You know what I mean? It made me think of like the Me Too movement, just so much that took place there. Victims were ignored. Victims' lives were like ruined, It was just, you got to listen to it, and it falls into that journalistic crime following, let's follow a case type of thing. Not so much like, let me tell you about a true crime that happened, more so of a journalist who literally has to be careful because he's following a case while it's ongoing, while it's in its, court situation, and there was like some threats and stuff that happened. Anyway, you just got to listen to it. Highly recommend. It was a ride. That wraps up my 10 podcasts you should binge in 2021. And short and sweet, if you are new to podcasting, just a couple things you need to know. One, it's free. Unless you decide to pay a premium or go on Patreon or help out your favorite podcaster, podcasts are free. You find them on all sorts of podcast players. My personal favorite is Apple Podcasts, and then sometimes Spotify. I just find that the Spotify app, I listen to music on Spotify. I listen to podcasts on Apple Podcasts. That's just how I roll. If you have an Android, you likely can download a free app. I believe Google Podcasts used to have an app. I don't know if that's changed. And then there's all sorts of podcast players. So if you literally just go into your, Google shop and you search podcasts, something's going to pop up. You download it, and it's generally free. It should be free. If it's not free, keep looking. And then you search up your favorite podcasts like Friendo, and you follow, and you can, on Apple Podcasts, you can rate and leave comments. And it just, it's an interesting platform because unlike lots of other platforms, there's usually opportunities to leave comments like here on YouTube or Instagram or wherever. But podcasts, it's just not that way. So the only way a host knows if you're enjoying the show is if you reach out to them through Instagram and connect with them and let them know, or you rate, review, and of course, telling people about podcasts like I'm doing doing with you, word of mouth is such a great way to get these shows into people's ears and help really build up and support your favorite creators. So that is how you listen to podcasts. It's super easy. And I find my personal preference is a Bluetooth headset. I don't do anything without listening to podcasts. Like, I genuinely look forward to folding laundry or vacuuming or tidying up on a Sunday type of thing because I get a chance to catch up on all my favorite shows. That's just how I do. Am I wearing a fanny pack? A lot of the time, so I can have my phone close by, so it keeps the connection real good. So that's my favorite shows for the time being. Be sure to leave me yours in the comments. Let me know if any of these are your favorites and what shows I should listen to next. Thank you for being here. Subscribe if you're new, and I'll catch you in my next video. Bye!